Hello, BookTube, and welcome back to March Mystery Madness, an old and venerable and wonderful BookTube event that I have the honor to be a co-host on. I've been co-hosting for quite a few years now. It's celebrating murder mysteries in all their different forms and factors, all of there with the bean yawning in the background. You don't like murder mysteries, baby? No? No? In Frida's investigation of any murder mystery, she would come to the same conclusion. The rain did it. She hates the rain more than anything. But we are reading murder mysteries all throughout the month of March, and the sort of informal theme this time around is lather, rinse, repeat. And I am concentrating on the repeat part by revisiting mysteries that I have read many times, or in most cases this month only one time, revisiting them sometimes decades later to see what I think of them and what I make of their mechanics in light of my kind of quasi-formed intention to write a murder mystery for Camp NaNoWriMo, which is coming right up. It starts on April 1st, which is a subsidiary event of NaNoWriMo, where you write, in NaNoWriMo itself, in November, you write a 50,000-word draft of a novel in 1 month, 1,667 words a day to get to 1,500 words in the month. Camp NaNoWriMo in April and in July is a more informal event. You don't have that 50,000 bar hanging over you, and it's also informal in terms of what you write. You don't have to write. Technically, for NaNoWriMo, you are supposed to be working on a brand new piece of fiction. For Camp NaNoWriMo, you can do anything you want: fiction, nonfiction, revising an older work, anything like that. I've written murder mysteries before for NaNoWriMo events of one kind or another, and they haven't been all that good. There are elements of plotting a mystery, of conceiving a mystery, that I don't think I fully get in the way that I, for instance, do with the world building of science fiction. So I'm going back to mysteries that I know either well or not. And the other day, I went back to this. I went back to A Beautiful Place to Die by Philip Craig, which is a 1989 novel. It's the first book in a series of murder mysteries of his, starring Jeff Jackson, a retired Boston cop who retires to the island Martha's Vineyard off the coast of Massachusetts, it's very close to the coast. A healthy person could swim it if they weren't worried about sharks, and they bloody well should be. And I know it really well. I know the vineyard really well in all of its seasons. Staying over the winter on the vineyard is a special thing. There's also an island farther out called Nantucket. Staying over in the winter of Nantucket before the modern era was also a fairly interesting thing. I've done both those. I know the vineyard in all of its moods, all of its different places, all of its different beaches and coves and forests. I know all its wildlife. And so a murder mystery series like this, I read this first book when it came out. And then throughout the early 90s, there were more Martha's Vineyard murder mysteries from Philip Craig. And I read them all and was interested right from the start to see one of the major things you're going to do in a murder mystery series like this that you probably won't always do in every other murder mystery series, which has me wondering if maybe I should do it in April. This very much falls under the category of a location-driven mystery. The location is a big deal. You're supposed to feel, well, the blurb on the cover is from the Houston Post back when they did really good book coverage. An exciting adventure that lets the reader become an islander for a while. And that's very much what you're supposed to be getting out of these books, in addition to, I keep forgetting the guy's name because he's such an unbelievably bland character, Jeff Jackson. We'll get to that. But the reason I can't remember his name is because he's completely forgettable. But anyway, one of the major elements in a book series like this, whether it's set on the vineyard or in southern France or on the Italian Riviera or in Venice, with, for instance, Donna Leone, one of the major elements in a series like this is going to be location. The location is going to mean something in a way that it doesn't in, for instance, a golden age London police procedural, where you don't think that you're describing a wonderland to anybody. You're not trying to convey the elements of the place. You're mainly concentrating on the elements of the crime. Naturally, when I'm thinking about writing a mystery of my own, I wonder if I should do that, if I should try to incorporate that in, wherever the place is. There are plenty of ongoing murder mysteries one of whose main reason for existing is that. But in addition to that, this book is also, and all the other mysteries that I'm reading for March, are making me think about the intersection between authority and detection. Leaving aside the question of local flavor here, although I'm going to read you a quote about local flavor, it seems to me that I need to reconcile, I need to understand for my own murder mystery and for every murder mystery that I read, what is the connection between authority and detection? In other words, are the people who are actually in authority to bring a criminal to justice, which is what murder mysteries are all about. Even in the golden age, they're still about finding out who's guilty. Whether or not you ever bring them to justice, it's about finding out who's guilty. And typically speaking, in the 21st century, it's the official law enforcement authorities that do that. So on the one hand, are the people in authority any good at figuring out who done it? And then on the other hand, are the people who are really good at the other element, detection, are the people who are really good at figuring out who done it, do they have any authority? Or are they, the typical feckless amateur who swans in and solves everything for the police, the type of figure that Raymond Chandler rightly lampooned savagely a century ago? What is the intersection between detection and authority? And murder mysteries tend to solve, for a long time, for probably 100 years, murder mysteries tended to solve that by having the detection done by an amateur, someone who's not a member of the police force, but who has a friendly relationship with the police force, or with someone who has a friendly relationship with the police force. There are police inspectors who think, for instance, that Miss Marple is an incredible nuisance. Why should I be sharing my notes or any kind of information with this old village busybody? But their superintendents know that she has, as one character puts it, a mind like a bacon slicer. They know that it is better for them to involve her, so they override the objections of their inferiors. Same thing right down the line. Even when you get to the text of all murder mysteries, which is the Sherlock Holmes canon, Holmes might have a testy relationship with figures in Scotland Yard or local law enforcement in the places where he goes, but they have a grudging respect for him, and they tend to involve him. They tend to give him what he wants. And if he didn't have that, if they didn't do that, well, some Sherlock Holmes murder mysteries would turn out very differently. If he wasn't able to say, well, Inspector, I think you have your man, if 2/3 of the way through almost any Sherlock Holmes mystery, the inspector was likely to say, I think you're our man, as would happen, as several very acerbic critics have pointed out over the last century, that in some Sherlock Holmes canonical stories, he's the foremost suspect. Any police officer would arrest him just on principle. But that relationship exists. It starts out in Holmes, and it just moves on from there, and it exists almost always. And in quite a few modern murder mysteries, the writer simplifies the whole process by simply making those two forces the same. Either by saying that in the ranks of the people who have authority will be someone who's particularly good at detection, or, far worse, in my opinion, far less believable, far more nefarious, will be saying, okay, nobody on the authority side has any skill at detection, and they don't need it. Because the grinding gears, the machinery of authority, will determine who's guilty anyway, whether they know what they're doing or not. Want to get down, baby? Do you want to do yoga? Here, let's put this here. If you're going to do yoga, they're going to want to see it. There we go. Oh, that looks good. You going to get all feet on the floor? There you go. No, you're not done yet. There you go. Oh, goodness. She just stretched like that for minutes at a time. Now she's done. She's going to get really comfortable, and I don't have the heart to tell her that we're going out as soon as I finish this video. It's slopping down sleet outside, and she's not going to like that at all. But anyway, back to what I was saying. What was I saying? I was whining on about something. Oh, right. The two axes, authority and detection. Is it the same person doing both? And a lot of police procedurals, and I'm coming to this book, I promise I am, a lot of police procedurals just sort of say that we don't need detection because the grinding mechanism of paperwork and coercion that characterizes a police force will get to the detection part. We don't need flashes of inspiration. This is all a matter of gumshoe. This is all a matter of shoe leather. I don't like that. On a lot of different levels, I don't like that. Obviously, I don't like that for a whole bunch of reasons, some of which would have been true in the 21st century, some of which are more true in the 21st century, as I've raised on this channel a couple of times. I don't think it's possible to innocently enjoy a police procedural in the 21st century. And I've raised this on a Steve stream, and I've also had a number of really good email conversations that are ongoing, back and forth with a lot of you. You seem to be very shy of Voxer, a lot of you do, but emailing you're perfectly happy to do, and it's been wonderful, absolutely wonderful. I'm perfectly willing to admit that a lot of you have read as many murder mysteries as I have, some of you even more, and I love getting your thoughts on the subject of what to do with police procedurals in the 21st century. In the 21st century, in which we have more documentary evidence than all the centuries before it combined of all the evil that police do on a routine basis. The friendly, florid, white-haired, red-faced cop in any city or town anywhere in America is every bit as likely to turn up on the national news the next week with body cam footage showing him just simply executing someone who happens to have black skin. Just simply executing them. I pull you over, I'm wearing a body cam, so I know that everything I'm doing is being filmed. I walk up to the door of your car, tell you to lower the window. You don't have to do that, keep in mind. You can, if the cop tells you roll the window down, you lower it down a crack and say, I'm talking to a lawyer, I'm not talking to you. That's all. That's all. That's absolutely all. He can't open the door, he can't break the window, he can't ask you to lower it anymore, he can't do anything. You lower it just enough so he can hear you and you say, I'm talking to a lawyer, not you. But it is now a common viewing thing in America to watch that florid-faced, white-haired, completely nice, normal guy, the guy who you shoot the breeze with him at the local diner for 20 minutes before you went back to work. It's perfectly natural now to have body cam footage of him walking up to the door of that car, telling the passenger, who's black, to lower the window, telling him, what are you doing? Please give me your license or registration. And when the driver says, do you have a reason to be questioning me? Do you have a reason? Any kind of, do you have any reason for me to obey your commands? I'm just sitting here, I'm parked, I haven't done anything at all. And we have film footage of that florid-faced, white-haired cop hearing that objection. That's all. Person in the driver's seat not moving at all. Simply saying, do you have a reason for demanding that I show you my ID? That in response to that simple question, that cop pulls out his revolver and kills the person. That is not outlandish anymore. That doesn't bring the news cycle to a screaming halt. We have seen footage like that. All of us have. Lots of it. Which to me fatally complicates a police procedural in the 21st century. It fatally complicates the idea of that grinding machinery of authority successfully solving crimes, especially since your local police department, my local police department, my city police department, your state police statistics, I guarantee you that if you live in an urban or semi-urban area, your police department's success rate for closing murder and assault cases is hovering around 30%. 30% success rate in closing those cases, if it's that high. I guarantee you that in an urban setting, that's about what the percentage is. That information might not be public record. It should be. It is your right to know that. But your police department's budget will be a public record. And in exchange for that 30% at the most success rate, at the most important part of their job, their budget is billions of dollars. It dwarfs the budget of almost anything else in your city. In light of knowing all of that stuff, a police procedural novel having the effrontery to tell me that not only will the machinery of law enforcement impartially find the guilty person, when you cannot be guilty simply sitting in your car asking a cop a question, but also the successful part. It's as much a flight of fantasy as dueling wizards to say that an urban police department is successful at its job. So I worry about the wedding of those two things in police procedurals, authority and detection. Those are the two parallel lines that I wonder about in murder mysteries. And the reason that we come here is because our main character, whose name I have once again forgotten, his name is Jeff Jackson. He is a retired Boston cop, and he has retired to Martha's Vineyard to fish for bluefin. I should warn you ahead of time that colorful evocations of Martha's Vineyard. The idea about a plot, there is a plot here. Someone plants a bomb on a boat and it kills the guy who was on the boat. Main character quickly realizes that it's a strong likelihood that the bomb was placed by accident, that the person who died was killed accidentally, or if the person was killed intentionally, the person seems completely harmless who was killed. If he was killed intentionally, then main character figures out that there must be something bigger behind this. He can't have been as harmless as he seemed. Someone had to want him dead. Though there is that kind of a plot going on here to mar the idyllic fishing landscapes of Martha's Vineyard, but I have to warn you, that plot notwithstanding, if you are not interested in fishing, you're going to have a hard time with this book. You really are. A lot of you are interested in fishing. But if you're not, you're going to feel left out. You're going to feel like this book is written directly to someone else and not you. I, of course, am not interested in fishing. I'm not interested in it at all. I object to it on a lot of grounds, but mainly the torture grounds. I mean, you're anyway. That's a different video for a different time. Our main character encounters a female love interest who is learning how to fish. He encounters her when he goes to his favorite fishing spot, and he gives her a few tips on how to fish. And he likes the cut of her jib. He likes the curve of her highway. He starts to become fascinated by her. She doesn't exist except to make quips as his potential love interest. Neither one of them really exists at all. But it raises the question of those two nodes of a murder mystery, authority and detection, because although main character is an ex-cop, and although the island cop, the vineyard cops, don't seem to like him all that much, they wish that he would stop butting into their business, they still tell him far more than they would tell a civilian. They still share all kinds of stuff with him that help him to figure out who planted that bomb and who's guilty of the rest of the violence in the book. The rest of the violence in the book reaches Robert Parker, Spencer levels, and then gets absurd. I mean, the violence levels in Spencer novels are often absurd, but then it gets to John D. MacDonald levels of absurd. I lost track. I lost count of how many times in this book main character is shot. And just seems to shrug it off, which would simply not happen. It would simply not happen. You just have to wink at all of that because it's definitely a part of this book. It's meant to set the scene of what main character is like. We never get any sense that main character is any good at detection. He doesn't seem any brighter than any other character, and he is, although he is in the begrudging confidence of the island cops, he doesn't have any direct access to the machinery of police enforcement himself. So he's basically just blundering around in the course of the book, butting in where he can, asking people questions where he can, employing lots of cop moves while questioning people that would just land him in a courtroom. If he's a normal person, they would just land him in a courtroom. At one point, he's trying to get a name out of someone that he suspects might know more than they're telling. The person has a priceless collection of china in a big armoire against one wall. And main character leans against the armoire and is asking the questions. The person is saying, please don't lean against that. The items that are in there are priceless. And he starts to wobble the cabinet. Starts to make like he's going to throw the whole thing to the floor and destroy all of these things. The person that he's questioning gets more and more alarmed as that is happening, saying, oh, please don't do that. These things are priceless, and I swear I don't know anything. It's a classic scene where a cop sweats a reluctant witness, but main character is not a cop. What he's doing is actionable in the legal sense of the term, and you don't ever buy it. You don't ever buy that it would make for a fairly standard, but at least a believable scene if this were a police procedural, but it's not. It's a second cousin to a police procedural. It's a procedural done in a grinding kind of shoe leather way, but by a guy who's not a cop, who doesn't have the machinery of authority. In this case, the book is really hampered by the fact that he doesn't have much in the way of detection either. An idea comes to him at the halfway point of this book, literally out of nowhere. You don't see it coming. It is not a connect the dots attitude to the things we've already seen as readers, to the things he's seen as a character. It's just the author nudging him and saying, look, I've got a book to write. Please be a little brighter. And there is an action scene halfway through, and then there's an action scene in the climax. So this is This is technically well put together, as you would expect from a graduate of the Iowa Writers Workshop. And there's one element in this book, at the climax of the book, that is very specific. I don't know Philip Craig, and I have not read when he attended the Iowa Writers Workshop, but there's an element in the climax of this book. It's very, very specific. I won't spoil it, but let's just say it does involve fishing. And that element identifies when he was at the workshop as clearly as a transcript would, because everyone at the workshop at that time worked that element into some later book that they wrote or some later short story. And we're not talking about a folded napkin here. This is a very outre element. It cannot be there by mistake. But it's not satisfying. None of it is. I don't root for main character. I don't remember his name. I've said it 3 times in this video, and I don't remember his name. He has absolutely no personality whatsoever. None of the characters do. The mystery is not all that much of a mystery. Really, when it boils down to the final act of the book, all of the art of detection, I've figured this out, this and this and this, goes right out the window. The thing that identifies the guilty party at the end of this book is that the guilty party is the one doing the shooting. Well, what kind of a conclusion is that? Anyway, there is one little bit here that I want to read that gives you an idea of the sense of place. The main character is talking, what is his name? Jeff Jackson. He's thinking at one point about female love interest. And he says, I went out to the garden, yanked out a few weeds, pulled up a radish to see if they were big enough for salads. They weren't. And turned on the water. Beyond the garden, I had a good view of Nantucket Sound. It was filled with sail. I wanted a sailboat and was trying to save for one, but couldn't afford it yet. Or maybe I could, but just hadn't got around to buying it yet. I hadn't got around to doing very much of anything for the past 5 years. I imagined Z, that's female love interest, and me in a sailboat out there. We didn't look bad. The sky was blue, the wind was 15 knots on the beam, the air warm, the sun shining, the way sailing ought to be. If you're going to imagine something good. Well, okay, that's companionable prose. And it's definitely meant to draw you into a kind of idyllic vineyard living where the character admits he's been in stasis for a long time, hasn't really thought about anything because it's so peaceful. The vineyard can be so peaceful when people aren't shooting up things. But I was reminded of this series on Bill Rutenberg's channel, the Rutenberg Library. He read a few of these and really liked them. They are kind of a combination of a watered-down version of a police procedural and a location-driven cozy mystery. And I can see the appeal. And if I remember correctly, I haven't read these since Bill was in high school, but if I remember correctly, they get better as they go along, not worse. So it's possible that I would fall in love with them on a reread the way he did. But I have to confess, rereading this first one after, 1990? 30 years? Really doesn't. I have all the rest of them in paperback, but it really doesn't impel me to go on to the next one, especially since I'm grappling with the whole question of detection and authority. Who's doing what and in what combination? I'm trying to figure that out. That is the very DNA basis of any murder mystery that I write myself. I overdosed on police procedurals, on cop-related books, and because it's the 21st century, and because I've seen as much of that dash cam footage as anybody else has, and I'm outraged up by it as much as you are, too many cop dramas started to bother me. So I moved away to amateur dramas, and now I'm sort of taking one step back with an ex-cop. I don't know. I think for tonight's murder mystery, I will pick something that takes me further away again. I don't think I want to gravitate back towards a cop or an ex-cop in the center role of a police procedural. I think I want to step away from that. I'll go somewhere else tonight. And I think that will probably determine that I probably don't want to write any kind of a police procedural or heavy police presence in whatever murder mystery I write. I'm not 100% sure that I will do a murder mystery for Camp NaNoWriMo. I might not. But sooner or later, I am going to write another murder mystery, and I want it to be part of a series. I want it to be the first in a series. What role does official law enforcement have in that series? I don't know. I don't know. I'm still figuring it out. But anyway, that's it's not really a review. That's my reactions to A Beautiful Place to Die. The first Vineyard mystery, it's not helping with a lot of my clarifying thoughts for Camp NaNoWriMo. But I have to confess, even in this book, which does not star a cop, it stars an ex-cop main character whose name I just read it to you a second ago. I've already forgotten it. He's an ex-cop, but he has all the attributes and the benefits and the insider knowledge of a cop. So I don't draw that much of a distinction. I guess maybe he's an ex-cop because you're not supposed to hate him, or because he's not supposed to have a superior to report to. I don't know. It didn't do it for me. I think I'm gonna get further away from anything cop related before I go back. And I'm going to resist the urge to read another A.Z. Mayo mystery. They very much have no cops in them at all, and they're on Cape Cod, which you can see from the vineyard. I'm going to try to get away from both of those. We'll see what I do. Maybe I'll go to the Golden Age. Plenty of non-cop main characters in the Golden Age. But I will find something else. I will read it tonight. I will report back next time for our March Mystery Madness. So I'll wrap this up, and I will see you then. Thank you, BookTube.